You can't find your voice if you don't use it. This is We Are Podcast, formerly called Should I Start a Podcast? A podcast for podcasters who want a podcast that grows their business and brand. How many times can we say podcast in a sentence? Here's your host, Ronsley. He has interviewed more than 1,500 people, has been listened to over 5 million times in 133 countries. He has helped create over 1,100 podcasts for businesses, brands, and personalities. He's been doing this for more than a decade. Get ready to take notes. Enjoy the show.
We're having conversations with people all the time. What are the things that we got to look at to make us bring out the best in them? As a result, it'll be a best for the content that we create. As a result, it'll be best for us. And it's all this like really cyclical effect. Is there a method to the madness?
Yeah, there is. And look, the way in which I've approached is a very simple process called that I start off with, which is purposing your problems. So a lot of the time we hide behind a mask. So the whole process that I do is helping people actually unmask themselves so they can become more vulnerable. And a lot of the time we put on a show, and that show ends up creating burnout, creating stress, creating overwhelm. So the more that we can open up, so we look at the emotions, the thoughts, and the limitations that people do to actually see what people are doing that are keeping them stuck. And I call this your superpowers. So, if you get anxious or you're worried about whether someone's going to like you, and you try and be superwoman or superman, we sort of explain how to break that down so you can be more vulnerable as a leader, which actually allows you to become more healthy as a person.
I'm finding out certain things, and I think we spoke about this as well at some point about being an athlete and trained to be an athlete. So you never give up. There's never a point where, actually when you have back is against the wall is when you find a new level of you, which is what most athletes kind of play for as well. Is really fascinating. So when is it that you sort of like, when are you on purpose and when you're not on purpose? Is there a way to determine that? Is there a way to kind of like look at that?
Yeah, look, I think what a lot of people do, Ronsley, is that people are typically on purpose with problems every single day. We've always got some sort of problem to break through, a glass ceiling to break through. So the thing is, what people do, there's a couple of things that people do when they're sort of pushing away. They're looking at the door that they could walk through and they're hitting the wall instead next to it. And so usually, it's those standard things. We procrastinate, we feel we're not good enough, and we do all the things that are difficult for us as opposed to pushing through those. So as an example, Ronsley, I will show up in the mornings. Let's say I've woken up and I'm not feeling good. Okay. And my first thought is, hey, I don't feel good enough. I'm not going to get there. I'm feeling overwhelmed. That's the thought that pops into my brain. We all have this. Now, our limitation could be just staying in bed or going and eating a pie with sauce. Or we go and step forward to the thing that we're most frightened of, and we start taking steps towards us. So we can move away from that pain, or move towards it and actually grow through it and break over to the other side. So Ronsley, we spoke about this on our podcast about resilience that I did with you. And that's where we have to, push through those barriers and step on that other side. So we can actually end up creating more issues by not following through. So it's the follow through that allows us to be on point with our breakthroughs. Right. So sometimes we can actually create a massive mountain that we've got to climb because we're not willing to step along towards a hill, and it turns into a mountain.
For those solopreneurs, they've graduated, right? They're the founders that they've built a team around, like myself, and we have an agency. In February, I went kind of any team member can start implementing AI in their workflows would get a 30% raise. How do you see us empowering them to use AI? In what capacity?
Inspiration and devastation.
Tell me more.
Sure. That's how new technologies work. The reason people start to use new technologies are because of inspiration or devastation.
Mm.
They either get inspired and they go on the offense and they're like, wait a minute, I am getting customers from social media.
Yeah.
I am getting leads from Google AdWords in 2000 when they thought Yellow Pages was better.
Yeah.
Wait a minute, it is good to have the internet on my phone.
Yeah.
And, when the iPhone came out, or even the BlackBerry. Inspiration.
Yeah.
They read an article, they saw a person talk about it, they got inspired to try it, they felt the effects, good. That's 20%. 80% is called devastation. Do you know when every liquor store in New Jersey got a website?
After Wine Library
started to take all their fucking business.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everybody laughed at me and my dad until they cried. In 1997, they laughed. In 2003, they cried. Devastation. When there's new big technologies, people only do two things. They get inspired or they get devastated by it, and that's when they jump in. When you're devastated by it, it's not too late, but you got to spend the next 5 years to get back to where you were when you were laughing at it.
Yeah. Amazing.
That's it, brother.
Hey, it's Mick Hawes, host of The Toolshed. I love making my podcast, and that's primarily because Ronsley has helped me avoid a whole bunch of really basic mistakes that would have cost me a whole bunch of time, money, and energy. And Rons has compiled a list of these mistakes and how to avoid them, which is really a steal. You can get your copy where I downloaded mine at mistakes.wearepodcast.com. That is mistakes.wearepodcast.com. We Are Podcast. You can't find your voice if you don't use it.
When you're looking at helping people and coaching people, what gets in their way of even starting? Because it seems like that seems like a big jump. Is perfection getting in their way? Is the idea that they have to get it right because they're the expert? What are you seeing?
So every person on the planet has a degree of these noises that go on in their head that either say, I'm not smart enough, I'm not good enough, I'm not loved enough, I'm not all this other stuff. When I'm talking with my clients, whether or not we're talking about a guarantee that they're going to put, an offer that they're going to make, a profit center they're going to launch, whatever it is, one of the gut checks that I'll often ask them is, how's that make you feel? And if they're like, you know what, I feel great, I go, okay, let's lean in a little bit more. And they, wait, what do you mean? I go, let's lean in a little bit more. And I'm like, I need you to feel just slightly nervous, slightly uncomfortable. Because if it's safe, we're not thinking big enough. We're not being bold enough. Let's go a little bit more. There's several billionaires and centimillionaires that I've met and I've studied and whatnot that have all this understanding that, their biggest success came on the other side of fear. And I think it was Jack Canfield that talked about success is on the other side of fear. And so when we look at things like what should we be doing in the podcast and so forth, like if it makes us a little bit nervous, if we get a little scared, that should be an indication that that's what we should be doing right now. If it makes you nervous, makes you a little uncomfortable, then maybe a reason why that is. You're likely going in the right direction.
When you're talking about not making sure we don't destroy ecosystems and we don't, go after a goal and forget what is the byproduct of going after that goal, it feels like sustainability is part of that equation where we understand the impact we are having across the board. And maybe that's something that I don't know whether you've thought about or not thought about, and love to get your comments on that. And is there a way to educate our kids? I mean, because that would probably be the biggest impact, not only about us doing the small things, but maybe educating them on what is sustainability and how to think about doing anything.
The awareness on an individual level needs to be built up, and especially in countries where products and consumerism is given as a granted.
Yeah.
For instance, here in Dubai, again, everything is delivered, everything is prepackaged. When I first moved into my building, this is actually a bright spot, and I think it's a great thing. So my wife and I, we coming from Germany, you recycle everything. Here, when we first came, I'm in a building of 400 probably, at 37 floors. Yeah, around 400. And there is, those Rubbermaid containers in the basement, for the entire building. When we first moved there, this container was always half full. Yeah. Fast forward to today, and we recycle everything. Even the plastic wrap for our fruits and veg, we will put into the plastic and we'll take it down. Today, you go down there and it is always overflowing with people that are recycling. So the awareness, I think, is coming about. People are doing it consciously because they know that, collectively it makes it different. And I think that people knowing that on an individual level, if everyone is making those sort of improvements or those efficiencies or contributing on a collective level, that's actually making a big impact. And I think that switch, understanding that you're part of a bigger thing, the more and more people that get that and that actually practice that, it will make an impact.
Yeah. You focus on CRM and data insights for business development and across different regions.
Yeah.
When you think about you becoming president and chief growth officer for RAP in the MENA region, can you share what that journey was like for you and what are the highlights?
I was in Qatar before for the World Cup, helping with the digital infrastructure there, which was incredibly interesting to help with a mega tournament there. And sustainability also was part of that conversation as well, which is great to see that they were making strides there. Coming to here, post-COVID, what we do, CRM precision marketing using first-party data. When I first came to the region about 3 years ago, that wasn't really a topic. Well, let's say it was a topic, but it didn't really have a place in the market. And what I mean by that is pre-COVID, there was obviously applications and stuff running here, but it wasn't a thing where you would have a lot of customer data to help drive interactions and personalization. Post-COVID, because people had to stay at home, they had to get things delivered, they had to get used to using applications for a multitude of different parts of their life, right? They became, let's say, comfortable with it, and this industry blew up. There was no real order to it. There wasn't really, people still think CRM is emailers, where it's much more about, business transformation and how do we apply business intelligence to reach out and to effectively communicate with your customer base in that adds authentic value. And that's what we do here. We're not a marketing company. We help brands and the business that is behind the brand to drive business growth.
Right.
And we do that through the brand and through brand communications.
Thank you so much for listening. Listen to the back catalog of over 300 episodes by going to wearepodcast.com. If you're looking for something specific, let the We Are Podcast team point you in the right direction. Send us an email on podcast@wearepodcast.com. Also, if you know a business owner who has a podcast, ask them to listen. Share an episode with them. The conversations here are going to save them lots of trial, error, time, and money. Until next week, much love.